What's up everyone, China Cycling here, and today we're looking at the brand new 2026 CRW CS wheels. These are the 50/60s I've got on my bike behind me here, and down here I have a set of the 40/45s as well. We're going to be going through what's new with these wheels, as well as a bit of a catch up for the old wheels if you're not familiar with the CRWs, so let's get stuck in. So if you're watching the channel, I guess you already know about the CRW wheels, but a quick catch up for those who don't know. The CRWs burst onto the scene seemingly out of nowhere about 2 years ago with their CS carbon spoke wheels. They were at the time absolutely revolutionary in terms of weights. They dropped like 150-ish grams off the other carbon spoke wheels out there, and yeah, they just took the world by storm basically. Now they've kind of turned into kind of like they've got like a cult following, like a if you know you know kind of wheel set. Jesse and Chris over on the Nero show, I know Jesse races and rides his almost every day, and the boys have kind of started using the CRWs as a yardstick to compare all other wheels to, which is super cool. Obviously GC, he's done a whole bunch of wheels, he's a big fan of them, but don't let me put words in their mouths, you go watch their stuff yourself. So yeah, the CRW CS wheels, the old ones, the new ones, let's talk about what's the same and what makes them special. I'd say the secret sauce is just the rims and the layup of the rims and how light they are, but another secret sauce is definitely the spokes and the lacing of them. So especially on the front wheel, we only have 16 spokes. But one way they're allowed to do that or can achieve that is because the spokes actually thread into the hub. That's one of CRW's patents here in China. And yeah, it just lets you have a super lightweight wheel without the risk of the spokes popping out or anything like that. Me personally, I also think 16 spokes on the front makes the front wheel super comfortable. I'm not a comfortable guy by any stretch of the imagination. I love my LA Sprints, I love my stiff bikes and stuff, but having a front wheel with a bit of compliance in it definitely helps, especially going around corners on a bit of an uneven road. They kind of track the road a bit better. Yeah, I'm all for that. I'm sure 16 spokes is also good for aero too. So yeah, spoke number and spoke lacing is the same. Depths are also the same. So we have the 50/60s, which are 50 in the front, 60 in the rear. And we have the 40/45s, which are of course 40 in the front and 45 in the rear. CRW also have the 65/75, the super deep boys. There is not a 2026 version of that. That's kind of been paused as we see what's happening with the whole UCI situation. Obviously UCI have come out and next year they're banning any wheels above 65 mil. And now not everyone watching races UCI stuff, so you can still buy their old wheels, but CRW are kind of like scratching their head about what to do with that. But I'll talk about that a bit later in the video. So let's talk about what's new on the wheels. We have kind of like three main updates. Update number one, my favorite update, is yeah, they've just shredded off some weight. So we've lost 40 grams per wheel set. So basically 20 grams per rim. So because they're now 40 grams lighter per set, that brings the 40/45s down to 1,140 grams and the 50/60s down to 1,250 grams. It doesn't sound like a huge bunch, but when you're talking that these wheels are already down in like the 1,200 grams, to knock off 40-50 grams is pretty impressive. Second biggest change is that the rear width has now got wider. So traditionally on the old versions, these wheels were wider and fatter on the front and then skinnier on the rear, kind of like the old Roval CLX2s. But people were saying they wanted more comfort in the back, they wanted the added benefits of having more volume of air from the inner width increase on the back. So CRW listened and they did that. So the rear wheels now have an internal rim width of 24 mil. That means on the 50/60s, the front internal is still 25 and the rear is 24. Obviously your front wheel gets more yaw angles, or I should say harsher yaw angles than the rear. So having a wider, fatter front wheel is usually a thing. And on the 40/45s, they're both 24 mil internal on the front and the rear. And the third difference, which is hard to see behind me, but we'll add in some B-roll, is they've now added bearing preload adjustment. So hub design, a huge rabbit hole we won't fully go down, but these days, these hubs that can be taken apart without tools are really popular. Most of these hubs are relying on the precision measurements of the externals of the hub shell and the internals of all of the hub axles and bearings and spacers, and relying on that to basically take care of the preload of the bearings. There's pros and cons to both ways of doing it, but one of the cons is that there's no way to adjust the preload. Now CRW have fixed this or addressed this. They now have this little bearing preload adjust collar. It's set up from the factory to be fine. So basically they set it up from the factory that it's clamped in the frame with 10 Newton meters of force. So if you clamp your through axles on your bike with 10 Newton meters of force, the preload should already be set perfect. But if for some reason you've got a situation where you're clamping with more or you're clamping with less, or your bearings have gotten old maybe and there's extra clearance in the bearings now and you want to just get rid of that clearance, then you can loosen this little 2mm Allen screw, I think it is, tighten it a little bit and retighten it again. You should do that with the wheel inside the bike. So the full procedure is install the wheel, you don't have the tire on it or anything, clamping your through axles to 10 Newton meters. Number one, check if there's any lateral play in the wheel. So when you shake like this, it's not bending it to see if it moves. It's just a little shake like this and see if you can feel any rattling. If you can feel rattling, that means you don't have enough preload and you need to add a little preload. If there's no rattling, you move on to stage two, which basically gives the wheel a little spin. If it's not spinning very freely, that probably means you have too much preload. So the ideal amount is basically to dial on the preload until the rattling just about disappears and then tighten it down. It's all in the instruction manual. If you're having trouble with it, get in touch with the team at Panda Podium and they'll talk you through it. But for 99% of people, you don't even have to touch it. It's only if things go wrong or as your bearings start to age. So super cool feature. Lets your hopefully bearings last for a bit longer before you have to change them, which is always a cool thing. So on the front wheel, the preload adjust is on the drive side. On the rear wheel, it's on the non-drive side. One unfortunate consequence of this, because the little grub screw sticks out a little bit, you can't use the central locking style type of disc rotor lock. So you know disc rotor locks, there are two types, one where the tool goes in the inside and one where the tool goes around the outside. You now have to use the one where the tool goes around the outside just because it has a bit more clearance. But those lock rings are included with the wheels, so you don't need to worry about that either. But why did I love the old CRW so much and why do I love the new ones even more? For me, it's just the ride characteristics. It's so hard to put into words, but anyone who's ridden the wheels, and if you go on Weight Weenies, there's like a thread on these wheels with like 90-something pages now. Anyone who's ridden them will know, like as soon as you step on it, the feeling of acceleration is absolutely crazy. We all know you want to reduce as much weight from the outside of the wheel as you can, and because the CRWs have super light rims, you really get them feeling like they're spinning up to speed really, really quickly. I think it's amplified even more for lighter riders like myself. We really feel the difference in a bit of wheel weight, and so yeah, I'm all about the CRWs. Now that the new ones are even lighter, of course, that's even more exemplified, and yeah, I just love the ride feel of these bad boys. So which one should you get? Obviously we've got the 40-45s and the 50-60s. It'll come down to your riding style, like do you ride mostly in the hills or on the flats or where you're trying to get the gains. But we also have some other possibilities we can cook up with now. So these days reverse mullet setups are becoming popular thanks to Specialized leading the way. So one option you could have now is to do the 50-60 rear wheel with the 65-75 front wheel. So that would give you a 65-60 setup. They'd both be nice and fat. Should be nice and light. I think that setup would be like 1,350 grams. Jesse Coyle is going to be trying that setup soon, so keep an eye on the Nero show. I'm sure they'll be talking about it when he tries it. But another setup that I think I'm going to be trying out is the 40-45 and the 50-60. So the front wheel from the 50-60 and the rear wheel from the 40-45. That'll give me a 50-45 setup. I think it'll be about sub 1,200 grams. We'll have a look in a minute. I'm keen to try out that setup there. So speaking of weights, I think that is a good time to get these on the scales and see what these bad boys actually weigh. So let's start with the 40-45s. So we have tubeless tape installed and tubeless valves installed, but no lock ring. So rear wheel on its own first. 636. Front wheel, this front wheel is ridiculously light. Again, no lock ring, yep. 1,156.5 grams, so 1156.5. Yeah, so 17 grams over the official weight, but obviously that was with the tubeless valves and tubeless tape on there, so take those off and we're under the weight. Let's try the 50-60s. Okay, let's try the 50/60s. So official weight is 1250. Oh, I just noticed this one does have the caps on. These are the caps I was saying that are supplied on the wheels. So rear wheel, 690 grams on the dot. And then front wheel, again, let me take off the lock ring. 1,255.5 grams. So yeah, 5.5 grams over the claimed weight, but again, we still have tubeless valves and tubeless tape in there. Okay, let's try my reverse mullet setup of the 50 front and the 45 rear. So we'll do the rear first, the same again. 1,202.5 grams. So yeah, without the valves, without the tape, will be sub 1,200 grams for a wheel set that has a 50 mil front wheel. I think that is going to be a setup that I'm going to be trying out. So yeah, I'll put that on the bike and update in the future. Yeah, so I'm going to use that 50/45 reverse mullet setup, which I think is going to be actually pretty good for climbing. Jesse's going to be using his 65/60 setup, which should be good more for flats and aeros. If you compare it to the CLX Rapide Sprints, it'll be deeper than those wheels and 50 grams lighter than those wheels too. So yeah, I'm interested to see how Jesse gets on with that. So as I said in the beginning of the video, in 2023, when CRW dropped these wheels, there was basically no rivals for them. They were the lightest wheels out there by a country mile. Then last year, Farsports launched their 2025 wheels, and they were the only wheels to come close or maybe even surpass the CRWs on weights. Now, it's hard to compare because they're all slightly different rim heights. Farsports do a 50/50 and CRW don't do a 50/50. And Farsports does a 38/38, no, 35/35 and a 58/58. So there's no like-for-like comparison. But if you worked it out, the Farsports was probably just a little bit lighter than the old CRWs. But now these CRWs have dropped 40 grams. They're probably lighter than the Farsports now. So does that mean they've got the crown back from Farsports? Which one should you get? I think it's going to depend on the kind of rider you are. One thing that I will say, the Farsports I think still win on value. So the Farsports, the Evo S5, which is carbon spoked, top of the line rim, 50 mil front and rear. That wheel set weighs 1190 grams with ceramic speed bearings, probably a little bit heavier with the normal steel bearings. But with steel bearings, that wheel set is just $1,499. That is pretty good value. These wheels, one good thing about the new Crafts, they're exactly the same price as the old Crafts. No price creep here, the same price as before, 1,680 USD. But on the Farsports, for basically the same money, a little bit more, 1,699 US dollars, you can get it with ceramic speed bearings. Obviously, ceramic speed, love them or hate them, but they are expensive bearings. So I think Farsports are now winning on the value game, but I think CRW are winning on the lightweight game, and also, in my opinion, the ride feel game. Difference, some people out there have probably ridden both. If you go on weight winners, there's a few people who've ridden both. I've ridden both. The biggest difference I'd say is that the CRWs just feel a bit more compliant. They don't feel quite as much as the harsh ride as the Evo S5s do. The Farsports wheels have a few more spokes, and I think in general they're just a bit beefier. When you get out the saddle and you sprint and stuff, both wheels feel equally torsionally stiff. But I just feel the CRWs have a bit more like vertical compliance and maybe a bit more lateral flex, which actually helps them on tracking corners and stuff. So yeah, if you're a really heavy rider, I'm going to say like 100 kilos or so, and you want a solid wheel set, maybe the Farsports is the way to go. If you're a lighter rider, especially as light as me, like 51 kilos today, the CRWs, I think the more compliant nature gives you a much better ride. And if you're somewhere in the middle, just do your research. I don't know, choose which one you think looks nicer maybe. But yeah, I'm going to say Farsports for value, CRW for weight, and for ride feel. But how do these wheels compare to the best of the West? Like I said, the Nero show, those boys are always using the CRWs as kind of like the yardstick. It's quite funny now that the Chinese wheels are literally like the top of the game, like even not debating price. So to prove that, I brought some stats along. So if we compare the CRWs, we can compare them to the Farsports like we did just. The other wheel to compare them to are the Scope Cycling R-Tech wheels. So the R-Tech A series, which are the all-road series, are the ones that have the more modern internal rim width. We've got the 4A and the 6A. So the 4A is 45 mil front and rear, Again, we can't do an apples to apples comparison because here we are 40 front and 45 rear. But those Arctec 4A wheels are 1,200 grams, so 60 grams heavier than the CRWs here. Inner rim width's very similar, 24 on the CRWs, 25 on the Arctecs. But those Arctec wheels are like $4,600 US, so it is what it is. Then the Arctec 6A, so they are the 65mm front and 65mm rear. Again, a lot deeper than the 5060s, so I don't think it's fair to compare, but just for the sake of it, those are 1,319 grams. And again, 25 front, 25 rear. If we move over to Specialized, obviously they just dropped 2 new wheels, also with carbon spokes. We've got the Rapide CLX3, which is supposed to be like their all-round wheel, which is 51mm front and 48mm rear, so basically a 50-50. And then the other wheel that dropped was the CLX Sprint, which was a deeper wheel set, which is apparently optimized for the sprinting. But we'll stick to the 50mm-ish wheel here, the CLX3. That wheel set, again, 1,305 grams. So 50 grams heavier than the 5060s, and the 60 on the rear a lot deeper than the wheels on their CLXs. So yeah, it looks like the Chinese wheels are still keeping their crowns. And again, just because none of these have exactly the same rim depth, I'll put another metric in here called gram per rim. Basically add up a 50-60, 50 plus 60 is 110, divide the weight by 110 and gives you gram per mil. This formula isn't great because obviously it doesn't take into account the weight of the hub and stuff, and this formula will favor deeper wheels, but it gives us a rough comparison. So if we look at grams per rim, the new 4045s are 13.4 grams per rim, the 5060s are 11.3 grams per rim, the Evo S5s are 11.9 grams per rim, so a little bit heavier than the CS 5060s. And then if we go over to Arctec land, the Arctec 4A, they are 13.3 grams per rim, and the Arctec 6A are 10.1 grams per rim, so the lightest gram per rim, but again, I said this formula favors deeper wheels a bit more. And then last one, the Rapide CLX3, 13.1 or 13.2 grams per mil. So yeah. Oh, and by the way, if you like comparing wheels like this and nerding out on all the different stats, we've actually got a cool feature on the website, this wheel comparison tool. You can bring up all the wheels that we have on the website, compare their inner widths, compare their weights, all this stuff. I'll put a link to that down below because that's a super useful tool. But yeah, that's kind of the end of the summary. Obviously, with the last year's wheels, the 5060s, I did a huge in-depth comparison with the Roval Rapide CLX2s. I'm thinking, should I do another video comparing these to another Western wheel? Which wheel should we choose this time? Which wheel should we choose this time? Do we compare to the CLX3s or do we compare to something else? I'm kind of tempted to compare them to the Scopes. Just because Chris and Jesse over the Nero show, they've been riding them, so I always like to compare my notes to other people's notes. I've kind of got a love-hate relationship with the Scopes. There's things I love about them, things I hate about them. I think, you know, it's a cool looking wheel with the scales and stuff. The hub's really cool being 3D printed. The weights are super impressive. I'm a weight weenie. But some things about them just kind of they like touch me the wrong way. Like, you know, they claim to be aero experts and have their aero optimized algorithm or whatever it is. But then the front and the rear rim are exactly the same. The situation of the front wheel and the rear wheel are completely different. So not even talking about rim depths, just rim widths and rim shapes. To have the same shape on the front and rear wheel, in my opinion, it's just because you want to save money on tooling costs. And when your wheels cost $4,000 US, trying to save money on tooling costs, it's a bit of a kick in the nuts. I reckon their next wheels, they'll have different front and rear, and probably some marketing spin to go with it, how they realized something. But yeah, if you're paying that much money for a wheel, I'd like them to spend some money on some tooling costs, I guess. But yeah, you guys let me know in the comments down below, what wheel should I get in to do a comparison against these guys? Hopefully don't choose the Scopes because my wallet can't afford that. It's going to be a painful purchase. But oh, and by the way, Scope, if you are watching, I was on your website just doing this research, and on your page, the link to the all-road wheels actually takes to the gravel wheels. You've put the wrong link on there. I tried to send you a message about it on Instagram, but you don't take messages from strangers on Instagram, which seems also a bit weird because customers might be talking to you. But anyway, fix your link. You're welcome. If you want to say thank you by sending me a set of wheels. No? Okay. Anyway, that's about it for this video. Like I said, I'm going to try that mullet setup. Jesse's going to try his mullet setup, and we'll compare notes after that maybe. Other than that, these are in stock and shipping now. They've actually been shipping for the past few weeks, but in the early weeks, supplies were a bit slow, and I didn't want to put any pressure on CRW, so I just didn't make this video. But now in stock and shipping, so head on over to pandapodium.cc and all that good stuff. Yep, I'll see you next time. China Cycling out.